stand here tonight breathing a big sigh of relief. Thank you, Iowa. I will keep fighting for you. I will always work to achieve the America that I believe in.
You know, guys, we're in this for the long haul. We are going to win states all over this country. Please don't ask me after, gee, is your victory in Minnesota? If you don't win Minnesota, will you da-da-da-da? We are in this to the convention. We're going to win some states. I think we're going to lose some states.
Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders locked in a virtual tie in Iowa, setting the stage for a long battle for the Democratic nomination. Now, Mrs. Clinton is trying to rally support in New Hampshire, where the polls show Senator Sanders leading by double digits. You're seeing a live shot of her event there in New Hampshire today. Joining us now, Bernard Whitman, former Bill Clinton pollster and CEO of Whitman Insight Strategies, and David Avella. He's the COPAC chairman and a Republican strategist. It's nice to have you both as we take a look at the Democratic field. Bernard, I'm curious your thoughts on this, and David, I'd like your thoughts as well. Is this a one-off for Sanders? We'll give him New Hampshire because it's quote-unquote his home state, right, just being next to Vermont. Is this a one-off for Sanders, Bernard, or is this the beginning of the movement that he's talking so much about?
Jen, I think it's going to be a two-off, and I give a lot of credit to Bernie Sanders. He's been a great voice in the campaign, and with the money that he's going to be able to raise from this recent victory, he's going to be a voice in the campaign for the months to come. But we have to remember that Iowa and New Hampshire are not the rest of the country. The only state, in fact, that has a greater percentage of white liberal Democratic primary voters than Iowa is New Hampshire and also Vermont. When you move to South Carolina, when you move to Nevada, when you move to many of the southern states that we're going to see in Super Tuesday, the electorate becomes much different. And her advantage, Hillary Clinton's advantage in those states like South Carolina, is 37 points. So I think as you move past these first two states, you're going to have a very different set of challenges for Bernie Sanders and a whole different electorate that's going to be facing him.
That's not what Sanders says, though, David. Do you think he's overly optimistic and you agree with Bernard, or do you think that perhaps, you know, he's going to be on a roll here?
Jenna, the fact that a 74-year-old self-described socialist from a small state can tie Hillary Clinton in Iowa and probably will be the winner in New Hampshire shows that the Clinton machine is weak at best at how weak she is as a nominee. And look, the Democratic establishment can fool themselves into believing that there is this firewall in the southern states and that demographics are what gets Hillary Clinton the nomination. There are just as many states that favor Bernie Sanders with its demographics, one, and two, that discounts the fact that the single biggest determinant is winning. And that goes, quite frankly, for both sides. As you collect wins, you get more people on your side. And so Bernie starts getting momentum. We've already had one superdelegate in South Carolina switch from Hillary Clinton to Bernie Sanders. So the Dems can fool themselves into believing that Hillary has this great firewall in the South, but what will happen is they'll need their convention superdelegates to make sure he doesn't get the nomination.
I'm curious, Bernard, David mentioned the socialist aspect of all of this. Of course, Bernie Sanders describes himself that way. In fact, a lot of the Iowa Democrats describe themselves that way as well. They say 43% of Democrats inside Iowa describe themselves as socialists. And there was this kind of infamous exchange between Chris Matthews and the head of the DNC a few months ago about the difference between a Democrat and a socialist. I just want to play that now.
What is the difference between a Democrat and a socialist? I used to think there was a big difference. What do you think it is?
The difference between
a Democrat like Hillary Clinton and a socialist like Bernie Sanders.
What's the difference between being a Democrat and being a Republican?
Well, what's the bigger difference? What's the big difference between a Democrat and a socialist? You're the chairman of the Democratic Party. Tell me the difference between you and a socialist.
The relevant debate that we'll be having over the course of this campaign is what's the difference between a Democrat and a Republican?
I think there's a huge difference.
Bernard, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because some are pointing to this and say, well, this is why Bernie Sanders is doing well in Iowa. This is why he'll do well in New Hampshire, but he won't do well in other states. However, when you see the head of the DNC struggling to explain the difference, one has to wonder what is the state of the Democrat Party in the nation today and whether or not Bernie Sanders has more of an affiliation and following than perhaps people are giving him credit for.
Well, I think that was not Debbie Wasserman Schultz's finest hour, and I think Chris Matthews is fundamentally correct. The fundamental difference between a Democrat and a socialist is that socialists believe in big government solutions, tax the rich, and sort of soak corporations. Democrats believe in a market economy that needs proper regulation, proper adjustment, proper guidance, but ultimately believes in the market to be able to help solve these problems. And I think the fundamental realities of the electorate are going to show that Bernie Sanders will do very well in Iowa, very well in New Hampshire, but 43% of the Democratic primary electorate across the country are not socialists. They tend to be much more centrist. They tend to be much more pragmatic. And ultimately, I think Hillary Clinton will be successful because Democrats want a progressive who can actually win, who can get things done, who can bring people together, who has a record of accomplishment, who can actually bring the promise of health care to everyone, not someone who has great ideas, but ultimately the solutions are backward-looking, old-style solutions that have been proven to not work.
David, I'm curious what you think about that and the definition that Bernard gave, because it sounds like that could be some of the defining variables of what a Republican is today as well. What do you think this means for the Republican Party if there is a group of Democrats that identify as socialists and there's a battle within the party to make sure one defines what a Democrat is versus a socialist?
Bernard better be careful. He's going to end up the chairman of the Democratic Party because he can better define who they are than their current chairman is. But look, the fact is the Democrats have superdelegates in place for a reason. It's so that if they don't like who the voters select, they can put someone else in. And so for all of those folks who are still hoping that Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden become the nominee, as this email scandal continues to percolate around Hillary Clinton, and an indictment could come anytime, and the fact that she is losing to Bernie Sanders in these early states, look, rules can be made to change, and this Democratic Party has a long way to go until their convention, and I can assure you that it's not a done deal that Hillary Clinton is going to be the nominee for the Democrats in 2016.
Well, we'll see what the next week and the next several weeks produce as we get a lot more results in. And Bernard and David, I hope you'll come back to watch them with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.